Welcome back to Scouting for Growth, the show where we explore the technologies, partnerships, and people reshaping the future of business. I'm your host, Sabine VdL, and today we are venturing into one of the most exciting and consequential shifts in enterprise innovation. Agentic AI, where autonomous, goal-driven software agents move from assisting humans to acting alongside them. To help us navigate this new frontier, I'm joined by two visionary leaders defining what responsible autonomy looks like inside global enterprises. First, Ulrich Homann, or Uli, as he is known to many, corporate vice president and distinguished architect at Microsoft. Uli leads strategic innovation across Microsoft's cloud and AI portfolio, shaping the architectures that make AI truly trusted, scalable, and sovereign. And alongside him, Mark Luquire, Managing Director and Global Microsoft Alliance Co-Innovation Leader at EY. Mark helps more than 400,000 EY professionals turn cutting-edge AI into enterprise-grade outcomes, from co-developing the EY.AI agentic platform with NVIDIA to transforming operations across finance, tax, and risks. Together, they are helping enterprises reimagine work itself with intelligence that acts, learns, and decides at scale. And here is why that matters for all of us. $4.4 trillion. That is the estimated global economic value generative AI and agentic AI could unlock annually, according to McKinsey. 40% of working hours could be impacted by automation as software agents take on repetitive and rule-based tasks, freeing humans for higher value creativity and decision-making. Yet, only 6% of organizations today have implemented governance frameworks for autonomous AI systems, reminding us of that capability without control isn't progress. Actually, it is risks. So, as we stand at the intersection of autonomy, accountability, and imagination, we will explore one vital question. How do we build an agentic enterprise that doesn't just work faster, but works smarter, and most importantly, works for everyone? So let's dive in. Welcome, Mark. Welcome, Uli. Looking forward to dive into this conversation around Agentic Frontier, reimagining enterprise AI with EY and Microsoft. Welcome.
Bonjour, Sabine.
Bonjour, Uli.
It's really great to be here with you both.
Lovely here with you both too. So just a little definition to get started, and then we'll go through some introduction for you both. EY described Agentic Frontier as the new edge of enterprise AI, where systems stop merely assisting and start acting. Goal-driven software agent that can plan, decide, and take action. Can you tell us more to get started, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think it's the time to reimagine everything, right? And how we function and how we do work. In the past, automation has been very task driven and very specific, and it has to go in a certain order, and you have to kind of know what that order is ahead of time. And while you need some of that with generative AI, what's happened is you now have a system that can help do some of that thinking. So if things change in the process along the way, you can deal with that, and you don't have to do that. A lot of those processes were built for people to do and to mitigate concerns around the people doing those challenges. And so now you can rethink what processes even need to exist, right? So focus on the outcome and how do you get to the outcome in a new way?
Thank you. So Mark, a little introduction. Who are you and what do you do at EY?
Yeah, so I get the great fun job of thinking of things that are next and helping our teams innovate collectively with Microsoft, working closely with Microsoft product engineering teams and bringing together our engineering teams and our client facing teams in the right way. So we help look at, what are the solutions that we want to take to market collectively and partner in. How do we collectively steer each other's roadmaps in a way that gives us both success as we go forward as well.
Uli, welcome. Lovely to meet you.
Love to meet you.
Tell us, what do you do every day at Microsoft?
I lead customer-led innovation for the cloud and AI enterprise business at Microsoft. And that simply means I work with fantastic people like Mark to see where our joint clients, including EY itself, needs in order to really deliver upon the promises that they either have made or are looking forward to drive themselves. And then I learn with, let's say, EY to figure out where my portfolio or the portfolio that I work with is either not quite right or is not quite sufficient. And therefore, I lead then the engineering teams to figure out how we meet the client's requirement better.
Thank you. So, Mark, let's start with reimagining the enterprise at the agentic frontier. So EY has already stacked real revenue, right? I read, and that leveraging 400,000 professionals on its EY.AI agentic platform. What AI moment convinced you this was more than another faster horse automation play?
Yeah, we a couple of years ago, we gave everybody access to generative AI across EY, powered by Azure OpenAI under the covers, right? And so by doing that, we learned that people were able to accomplish more quickly. They were able to use it as a thought partner, right? Use it as a way to balance things off. Use it as a way to fine tune their work product and what they were working on, right? I think for me, being able to see the evolution of generative AI and how fast things are changing, and recognizing that it's a time to not build the faster horse, right? It's a time to really rethink everything and reimagine what's possible. Being able to watch generative AI coding applications on its own almost, right? Being able to watch some of the new agent capabilities that we've seen some of the tools come out with, being able to take action on its own with very little prompting. And that just, if you really think about that, it just kind of opens the door for the possibilities and what you're going to be able to do in the future.
Yeah. So actually, when I talk to enterprises, everybody, right, has the word artificial intelligence on the lips. And now, particularly in finance and insurance, everybody wants to understand better what agents can deliver for the organization. So coming to you, Uli, from when we look at Azure's vantage point, what differentiates a true frontier firm, an enterprise which wants to be agentic frontier first from a fast follower? And how do you spot one in the wild?
Well, I have 3 ideas or perspectives on what that looks like. The first one is the big simple question: do you have an agent, a software agent, as a team member in your environment? Very simple question, and the answer should be yeah, I do have some team members that are software agents. The second thing I ask people is, what are you doing with AI in your work every day? Do you have autonomous agents already working on your behalf that you just gave guidelines and they execute whatever function you have asked them to do? And the third one, which Mark already alluded to, is really, have you really looked at how you do things today and how much of that are you going to replace with AI/agentic AI? So those are the 3 things I ask. And you can spot them in the wild if they are very, very aggressively looking at all 3 and bringing AI into all of their functions, maybe prioritizing specific business units or domains themselves, but ultimately really looking across the board from engineering design to procurement to finance to whatever the function the company does, bringing all of this in, meaning agents into the team, automation and using AI as part of their daily work, and then introducing agentic AI to effectively replace existing capabilities.
I often hear, and I was fortunate during this summer to go through an AI first academy, spending the holiday being taught. And 4 terms came out of this academy. Either we use AI as a macro tasker, either we use it as a co-pilot, a companion, then we use it as a delegate. But the hardest part, you just said, Uli, is to use it as a teammate. And I think that's where a lot of enterprise need to start thinking, how do we deploy AI as a teammate? Mark, let's go back to the past, right? Closing the 60 to 70% process coverage gap left by RPA. And I remember the time of RPA with the big claims, I guess it was 10 years ago, with all those metrics we wanted to see delivered. What for you mattered most then, and what does matter most today when we look at that teammate?
Yeah, I think, RPA was really focused on taking an existing process that was extremely repetitive and stayed pretty much the same and trying to automate that. If anything changed in there, or if there was any thinking needed in the middle there, then RPA typically couldn't handle it, right? And so what we see now is, with the combination of things like computer vision and some other capabilities, the new agent capabilities coming out, is that the generative AI can help think through that process, right? It can help rationalize a bit in terms of what needs to happen based on the things that it's going through. And that really opens the doors of possibilities going forward. So I think that's the key difference here in terms of, what's going to be possible. And if something changes in that process, if a form changes, if a button moves in the form, it's now able to compensate for that. Whereas before, you would have to go back in and manually re-record those parts of the process automation.
Yeah. So can I ask you as well then, when you meet with board members, and, I meet a lot of skeptical board members at the minute because there's so much to get done when we think about artificial intelligence. How would you explain why goal-driven software agents are better than LLMs, powered co-pilots that we've seen, over the past years to deliver value for their organizations?
Yeah, I think, this is where, again, focus on the outcome, right? Focus on where you want to be and then rethink how you get there. I think that's the real key. And so if you're able to take that entire process and treat that as the goal, then you're able to rethink how to get there and change it differently. And it's not just that it's an assistant to you, right? It's actually taking on work. It's actually doing, it's not just providing you information. It's actually thinking through and processing those things as well. Uli, I'd be interested in your thoughts on that one.
I actually disagree with the way the question has been framed, because it's not an or question. It's an and question. Okay. You, me, Mark, we will all have an LLM-powered co-pilot as our assistant. I personally don't know how I would work without the Microsoft Copilot being with me, because it answers all of my questions. I don't use search engines anymore. I just use my Copilot, and that's a function that is LLM-powered. The power of the software agent is also coming from an LLM. So this is not different. It's just a different implementation, in the sense of the Copilot is here to help me personally. I ask a question, it responds. An agent, I program to fulfill a task. I give it a goal, but then it still uses the large language model to understand what that task is I'm giving, figure out the reason over the request, deliver a plan, and then integrate or access tools to execute the task. And so from my perspective, this is just two sides of the same coin, meaning it's all LLM powered. It's just you give a goal, execute. The other one, you ask questions and it interacts with you. And sometimes actually a software agent will turn around and ask you a question, because that's a team member that says, hey, Sabine, I tried to get this done. I'm running into this roadblock. You need to unblock me. So think of this more as an and, not as an or.
Very well said. So in some ways is when I look at the LLM I use every day, they are there to support me. But potentially when I start looking at agents, which are sitting in my organization, they are actually helping more from an external viewpoint, how the business run.
Correct.
So let's talk about skill, culture, and people, because one key part of this is about transformation. A lot of workers say that leaders are automating the wrong things. How do you decide which human tasks should be protected and which should be delegated to agents, Mark?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. Stanford did a study called "The Future of Work with AI Agents," and it was kind of interesting what they uncovered there. Right, where they found the resistance was when there was an absence of human qualities or capabilities, or fear of replacement, or lack of trust in AI. Right, but where they found that people were motivated to use it, that workers were really excited about it, was automating some of the mundane stuff that they do over and over again, freeing them up to be focused on the things that they can add value that as a human, as a person, into the mix as well. The study broke things down into the green zone, those things that AI can handle right now and that the workers want to be done, and those things that kind of in our red zone that are the opposite of that, right? And what they also found is that a lot of investment is happening in the red zone right now, that is a little bit counter to it. So it's a balance there, and finding that happy medium is where you can have the best success.
So, Julia, when we look at the enterprise out there, are they actually automating the wrong things? Because we talk about automation, but we also talk about augmentation. So how do we protect the roles of tomorrow?
Again, I don't think it's as much about protection than it is to really figure out what is human ingenuity and what's uniquely human because there's lots of things that AI can do, but there's also lots of things that AI can't do and won't do for quite some time. So when you think about real creativity, doing new things that have never been done before, AI can't do that, at least not today. AI can make a great impression of doing it because it has so much knowledge of what has been done before, but truly unique things you can't do. Or it doesn't really understand risk management per se. So we effectively as humans should have a risk perspective. So there's uniquely human things like creativity, risk management, and those kind of things, which AI should just help us and support us. And as Mark already said, there's lots of stuff that people have to do today that really isn't uniquely human or it really adds value to their lives or to their work. And there AI can be just super helpful. My perspective is more like we should just think about people and AI agents working together to achieve the company's outcome, and do that with respect to, of course, dignity for people, and really bringing the uniqueness of the person out, and then have AI do the boring stuff, the repetitive stuff, where the ingenuity of the people doesn't really matter or doesn't really help.
Yeah,
I think that's right. Yeah.
I hear you. Mark?
No, I was just going to say I agree with that, and I think that's where the focus has to be.
Absolutely. It's about, for me, when I use AI on, like you every day and multiple different tools, right? Because all of them have their strengths. And so you actually learn to actually use the tools which complement each other. I feel it's about, for me, the skills I've learned for 28 years. My system thinking is so important to know what question I need to ask, but also it allows me to have probably more time for creativity. And so, last night at 3:00 in the morning, I asked AI to do a task for me to review some of both of your report, Microsoft report and EY report, probably 50 of those. And, at last night at 3:00, I got my little summary and actually I was reading. So that is the power of the technology. I would probably not have been able to read over 2,000 or 3,000 pages just last night. Yeah. But that goes into upskilling and reskilling, actually, Mark. And I know that EY has put together the EY AI Skills Passport. And this capability, I believe, is free and open to everyone, right? And the goal is to help adoption and actually help people being surprised by what AI can do. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something we've done in partnership with Microsoft, right? And it's really is a joint effort here. In terms of kind of rethinking real quick, I'll tell you, I was working with a group that was trying to figure out how to use AI to transform how they do delivery and how they do different aspects, but they weren't using AI to help them think about how to use AI either. So I think, just some basics like that to kind of rewire our brains a little bit is important. The AI Skills Passport has been rolled out to over 30 countries around the world, with 6 more coming soon online. We've seen there's something like 200 or 2,000% increase in job descriptions globally mentioning AI, right? And that's pretty significant, but that also indicates that there's that reskilling effort, like you're talking about, that we have to go through. And so this effort this tool is available to anybody. You get a certificate with EY and Microsoft name on it at the end of it by completing it. And some of the feedback we've gotten is that something like 97% of the recipient or the people that have taken it feel more confident about applying for jobs that mention AI, right? They've learned about AI, entrepreneurship, sustainability, and other aspects in it. And some have even called it fun. So I definitely would encourage everybody to check that out.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, that made me think as well is, as I was looking at both of your research, a big term was around shadow AI. So, a lot of employees are bringing their own AI at work, right? And so when I think about that, Uli, shadow AI, right, is skyrocketing into employees' life because they are scared to be left behind. People want to keep their jobs and they want to be productive and they want to be differentiated. So what practical guardrails do you think we need to consider so that we do not kill innovation, but at the same time we protect our organizations?
Well, I think every organization needs to think about the basics. The first basic I have is, what is your responsible AI strategy? And the simple thing is to say, okay, this company, whatever it is, let's say Microsoft or EY or whoever you are, you should have a charter of, here is what we are going to use AI for. And this is our goal with the introduction of AI as a company. And once that is public and every employee gets trained on it, then at least you have some guardrails where people understand, okay, here's how we want to use AI and here's what we're not going to use AI for. And I think that's the basic stuff. Then obviously you need to worry about data leak. So you need to make sure that consumer grade products cannot be used in the enterprise because, again, in most consumer products, anything you feed into those applications will be utilized to train the model. So there might be proprietary information that you effectively will inadvertently leak. So data leak prevention is something that you need to think about, which is important for the company. And my view is the best way of really curbing shadow AI is to give the user base, your employees, the tools that they need to really fulfill their jobs, and make sure that the tools are authorized but available to everyone. Like our friends from EY have done, they have rolled out the M365 Copilot, as far as I remember, to every employee of the company. And that effectively gives people the tools they want, while at the same time giving the company the guardrails and the protection they need in order to protect proprietary IP, data, and so forth.
So, Uli, if you don't mind me asking you to repeat this, because I think it is important. So if we deploy 365 and the Copilot right now, right, most companies, my company has an enterprise version of Copilot, I am going to be secured, right? I can use Copilot in a secured environment.
Yes, so Microsoft 365 Copilot is an enterprise product, which means all of the data that you feed into it go into your environment and stay in your environment. None of the data is utilized by us or any model provider that you might use to train the model. And that's the difference to the consumer grade products that you have potentially using. And that's where you need to pay attention as an enterprise. Again, the easiest is give the employees tools that they can and want to use, so that they don't feel left behind. And that way you can control your own destiny.
Yeah, and so that is important because, again, when I talk to financial services institutions and insurers, the employee part now, a lot of them are scared to do the wrong things, even though they may be actually using an enterprise-grade piece of technology which has been deployed internally. They are scared to put customer information. They are scared to actually even send an email using the tool. And the reason is the understanding between the customer grade, enterprise customer grade, and the one we use on maybe our mobile device. So I think it is important for people to know that when it is being purchased by the company, the enterprise, it is actually okay.
Yes.
So it is time to reimagine a little bit everything, right? And so to actually change things to avoid fatigue, because we talk about AI every single day. I mean, every day I have an email around artificial intelligence. So what would be one thing you think could keep leaders curious about, building with AI whilst managing internal anxiety? Starting with you, Mark.
Yeah, I appreciate this question. I'll probably give you more than one thing, but I think it depends where an organization is and their sort of life cycle of this, right? The AI capabilities and technology is changing so rapidly, right? It's hard to know what things are going to look like a few years from now, even, right, at this point. So I think first, keep yourself educated. That's probably key, and help your workforce be educated as well. We've learned that very quickly, especially when we rolled out the first generative AI tools. People were using it as a search engine rather than using it as sort of a thought partner and a way to refine and to do other things. And so that's just evidence that with any new technology, education, training, et cetera, and upskilling is super important to maintain. I'd also say focus on evidence over hype, right? So go after those small experience that help you and your organization build trust and the capability, and focus on the outcomes of those, and then spread the lessons learned broadly across the organization. Uli, I'd be interested in your thoughts as well.
No, actually, I think, Mark, you're exactly on the right path. First of all, don't spread AI senseless into the organization. Really have some high value scenarios that really are real pain points that either cost you a lot of money or just cost a lot of time, whatever the dimension is you want to improve, and really go after this. Again, this is not contrary to what I said before, meaning give AI capabilities to every employee so that they can guide. Here I'm talking about agentic AI. So for me, co-pilots and tools to help every employee to do better and faster or more precise, whatever the dimension is you care about there. More productivity, that is something that should just be there. This is an enterprise capability, must be there. And agentic AI, this is where you should focus, figure out what the pain points are in your organization, build the first 2 or 3, and then celebrate them. Because I think creating evidence internally that it actually did save money or had a great ROI is something that should be well known and well understood in the leadership, so that they effectively understand, when I invest here, I can save money, be more productive, whatever, again, the dimension is you're tracking.
Yeah, I think that's important. I just add one. I think that's important to recognize as well. Not everything's going to succeed, right? And so celebrating those wins becomes really important, and understanding how you accomplish those wins becomes really important, right? There's some large percentage of investment in AI things that are not always panning out, right? So I think it's really important to focus on the wins, and focus on the mistakes as well, right? And learn from those and adjust.
So I would like to dive into something which is critical, and we started talking about that for enterprises, which is governance, risk, and the power of partnership, because we can't do it all alone. So starting with you, Uli, autonomous agents compound errors at machine speed when it does not work. So what does a kill switch look like in practice, and who holds the keys?
Yep, it's a very good question. It's a really important question also to answer as part of any agentic AI program that a company puts out. So the way we are talking about this is so-called evaluations. And there are two types of evaluations which you can utilize as an enterprise. One is through the development process. So if you build your agents, you can use evaluators to effectively check if the system is bias-free, if it behaves the way you intend to, and so forth. So that's when the development process happens. And then when you deploy the agent, you can deploy other evaluators that effectively check on the plan, check the data that they use, check on what the system is proposing to do. And if it doesn't fit within the guardrails you have set for the agent, this evaluator stops the execution. And the key is in the evaluators. And from my perspective, design time and operational, the evaluator should be provided by a governance or central IT team that effectively sets guardrails for all agents and sets them out there so that the responsible AI charter that I talked about before gets reflected in those evaluators. And that is something that the individual agent developer should not necessarily own because they might be too sympathetic to their work. So from my perspective, this should be an independent team that just looks at protecting the enterprise, protecting the process, and protecting the data.
Yeah. Mark, anything else?
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. It's almost like, we have auditors, right? That go in and audit things, right? That's a big part of our business, for example, right? And so, what's your sort of AI auditor in that process flow? I think that's another way to think about it.
I love that analogy, Mark. That's actually really cool.
But I think about what you just both said, I wondered, have you already thought about what the roles of the futures will be? I mean, auditors become ethical auditors, or, we have responsibility, in my case, underwriters. Have you thought about, maybe Mark, around some of the new roles we need to think about in the future?
Yeah, we definitely keep thinking about new roles, right? And I think we sort of alluded to it earlier, but there's the re-architecting of roles that's going to happen over time. I think as part of this, right? I don't have specific examples to share with you, but developers are becoming creators that have these powerful assistants that work with them to be able to do more. And so I think we have to be open to that idea. That also goes back to the reskilling. Like, how do we help people be successful along that journey, along the sort of workforce transformation that we're going under right now?
Yeah. So let's talk about liability models. So given the increased demand for explicit liability models, Mark, how can we ensure a high level of accuracy when we think about something like a tax return filing? What roles do humans in the loop, for instance, and in enterprise level implementation, we need to have a human in the loop. So what does that human in the loop play in managing this accuracy when we look at the EY and Microsoft alliance, when it actually announces that process?
Yeah, I think there's a few things here. The human in loop is super important. This is why in the Microsoft research, you hear the concept of an agent boss, right? The person that is overseeing the work that the agents are doing, right? Another way I sort of think of agents right now is they're like a really smart intern, but they still need guidance. They're still learning. You still have to keep an eye on the things that they're doing, right? So I think the same thing holds true here in terms of the human in the loop piece. The other piece is the observability or traceability starts to become really important, so that when you do encounter an issue, you can kind of understand where it came from, right? You have the evidence trail of how it came to that answer as well. We can't lose sight of that. That becomes more and more important, so that it's not a black box that it goes into and that you get a magic answer coming out of.
Yeah. Uli, anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I come back to the auditing process that Mark so eloquently threw into the mix here. If you think about it, human supervision actually doesn't start just in the actual execution. It already starts in the design process of the agent itself. And also it is obviously in the supervision process, the auditing process. So these evaluations that I mentioned, that's effectively also supervised by humans, because they implement those evaluators and they place them at the right part of the process, so that humans oversight, which can be human, meaning somebody really looks at things, but it can also be human designed at the software design process as well as the auditing and governance process.
Yeah. So Mark, sector-specific IP. This is your bread and butter at EY. This is your moat. So how do you balance openness for ecosystem partners with the need to protect that domain depth?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And I think we have to really think about, what do we mean by IP in this space, right? So for example, we have repositories of millions of documents related to tax regulation and code, tax law opinion, all sorts of things that go into us being successful as a tax service provider in the ecosystem, right? And so having AI be able to use that becomes really important. But going back to what we just talked about in terms of that observability, that traceability, right? We're still able to protect our IP in the right way, while also building confidence with our clients in that as well. So I think that's really important. And we're going to continue to see that to grow, right? The IP and professional services is not just what our people bring to the table, but it's also what we've built over the hundreds of years, over 100 years that we've been in existence, in terms of the knowledge capabilities.
Yeah, really looking at 18 months from now, what for you will be the major milestones that the EY Microsoft Alliance will deliver for us all? What are the promises that we could maybe see happening for enterprise out there?
Well, first of all, I would say that EY and Microsoft have already done a lot of industry-defining work before the AI capabilities. So we've done quite a lot of work in data leak prevention and lots of other interesting scenarios. But on the AI side specifically, I think I really like the way Mark defined what is EY's specific IP. Think about if an EY auditor can now go to their client, and instead of doing just a little piece of testing here and there, they're actually to now take the entire transaction book of a large corporation, apply the EY IP on top of it, and can not look at just pieces of the transaction and say, yes, okay, I think we're good. They can now say, no, actually, I've looked at all of that data and there is no issues in the data at all, and I can really sign. Because today we're signing based upon elements of testing. Now we can test the entire book. And that's something that I would say, can we do this in 18 months? I hope so. But that is, for me, a defining moment. That will change the way the audit industry works. And I think we are at the brink of making this possible.
Anything else you would like to add, Mark, on these 18 months from now?
Yeah. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there, right? I think our relationship with Microsoft, our alliance with Microsoft is unique in the sense that we're not only huge in terms of in the marketplace and helping our clients be successful with Microsoft technologies. We're using them ourselves. We're a huge consumer of them to drive our business, to serve our clients, and to help our people be successful. And so we can't lose sight of that. We have a number of efforts underway, right? Deep partnership with Microsoft on SAP related capabilities around the Agentic enterprise, right? Continuing, as Uli said, around transforming how we do auditing, how we do tax, using agentic capabilities. And I think, the key here is our deep relationship with Uli and his team and the rest of Microsoft to really co-innovate together, to help come up with new roadmap capabilities for both of our organizations together and bring those to life. So there's a lot of bright ahead in the future potentially, and I'm excited about how we're going to get there.
Well, thank you. One thing I want to ask the both of you, because as people listen to this discussion, they would wonder, how do I reach out to Uli? How do I reach out to Mark? Uli, what can people do if they want to find out more?
Well, obviously, Microsoft has put a lot of content up, and this is on Microsoft.com. Mark has already talked about the AI skilling initiative, which I think is a great way of doing this. So I think there's lots of public places where they can find out more. And if they are joined EY Microsoft clients, there's always a relationship manager that can be found and effectively asked to help and engage. And I'm super happy to engage. So if there's somebody out there, just find me on LinkedIn and we can have a conversation.
Mark?
Yeah, I'd say likewise. I mean, EY.ai has a ton of information about our AI capabilities. The skills passport is there, other things. I definitely encourage people to go and check that out. Much of that in partnership with Microsoft as we've developed it. So, and to Uli's point, I'm on LinkedIn as well. So feel free to reach out and happy to engage.
Well, thank you to you both, Mark and Uli. And this has been for me an eye-opening tool on Agentic frontier. So I'm going to highlight 3 headlines, which I would like people to remember. The why now is undeniable. Generative AI has crossed the line from isolated pilots to goal-driven software agent that can plan, decide, and act at scale. The enterprises that we serve need to rethink processes. I mean, the processes of tomorrow are not going to be the one we actually used yesterday. So it will be about simplification, but also building a faster horse, as always, by capturing double-digit cycle time compression and avoiding errors. We need to think about outcomes. Outcomes first. Clients are beginning to select EY Microsoft Alliance for the compliance filed or the control tested, not just the hours logged. That flips the incentives model and forces every agent to provide auditable guardrails, kill switches, and explicit liability terms. But remember, it's also about people. EY's and Microsoft free AI skill passport give every employee a springboard into agent orchestration and prompt engineering. Reskilling is key. It's about reskilling and upskilling right now. This is the antidote to shadow AI, empowering talent with sanctioned tools before they hunt for unsanctioned ones. So thank you so much for joining me, Uli, and Mark. Let's get those board from the Fortune 500 to be more ambitious and to start scaling with agentic frontiers. Thank you to you both.
Thank you, Sabine. Very much appreciated.
Thanks, Sabine. I enjoyed the discussion.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Scouting for Growth. Please subscribe, share with friends, and leave a 5-star rating. Your rating is so valuable. I review all of them, and my team help me adapt content to meet your needs. Also, connect with me on my preferred channels. I am a B2B growth expert, so you will find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Threads, and X as well as Blue Sky. All information available below. Until next, keep scouting for growth.